All right, good morning. Excuse me. Morning, everybody. Today's dafs is Vav and Zion. Yesterday was Vav, today is Zion, so we want to get through them. As I mentioned, right, those of you that are access to the art scroll will be very useful because then I'm going to be pointing out pictures from the art scroll. So some of these concepts, many times Eruvin is very, known as a very difficult masechta, but part of its difficulty is just to sort of be able to picture the physical circumstance of the case. And so with a lot of pictures here, it helps it, or those of you who have the Perish Chai, another aid. Anyways, we left off at the bottom of Hey, Amud Beis.
A quick suggestion.
Yeah.
Since we're talking about lots of numbers, okay, I think just thoughts, yeah? When you make about the numbers and you can refer it to another number that is similar to that was said before, if we can correlate it. In other words, to emphasize on the number a little bit more, like, the 4 amot, the 10 amot, the 20 amot, or what we said before.
Which number? What do you mean?
In general, because the whole Masechta will be correlated to so many numbers.
Right.
So if we can correlate any new dimension to something that was mentioned before, so
okay.
we can connect. Verstehe?
Yes. All right. Let's see what we can do.
Okay.
All right. So 2 dots at the bottom, 2 lines on the bottom of Hamad Beis. It says Omar Rav Chanin bar Rava. Amar Rav Mavui Shanifratz Mitzido B'Yeser and Meirosho Ba'arba. So it says, and right away we're going to actually go now to some of the pictures. So it says Rav Chanan bar Rav in the name of Rav. So a Mavui that was broken, the walls were broken of the Mavui. Now remember, Mavui is an alleyway, right? Typically, alleyway like here's one end is open to Rabbim. We want to break it off so it's noticeable difference. The person has a carrying to it. So if part of the wall is broken, now if it's a wall on the side mitzido, then it's eser. Then it's 10 amos is the amount. So if it's less than 10 amos, it's no problem. It's 9 amos, no big deal. But if it's the front wall, in other words, the wall that's the area which is basically the wall that's open into the Rishus HaRabim, then it's only 4 tfachim. Right. If you look at the picture, those of you who have the art scroll, the first picture. Right. I don't know if everyone does or not, but right. You see the first picture. This is the one. So you see that if there's like the little break in the front wall, that's only 4 tefachim. But if it's a side wall, then you have up to 10 amos. Now, so it says the Gemara. So it says Ma'ishna mitzido eser. So what's the reason why on the side you say it's right? It goes up to 10. So down right? Because people will say, oh, it's only a Pesach. So Miroshanami a Pesach. So I understand the front would also say it's another entranceway. So why can't it be also larger, right? If in other words, because it's not completely open to maybe this some wall that's also enclosed part of the Mavui, but there's still entrance into the Rishus HaRabim. So you say there's 2 entrances on that side open into the Rishus HaRabim. What's the big deal? So Amar Rav Huna b'Rei Dav Yeshua could go in Shenifras b'Keren Zavis, right? And B'Pizcham Keren Zavis Lav Yinchi. Now, so the 4 tefachim doesn't mean maybe you're right. There could be 2 inches on the side, but maybe it's in the corner, right? So in the corner where the wall comes, you have a flat wall here, or right. You have a flat wall. I'll get my thumb out of there, right? On one side, and then the other side you have, basically almost like you have a half wall going into the Rishus HaRabim. The Rishus HaRabim is over here, right? So this corner is the one that's broken, right? So therefore, and you have less than 4 tefachim there is okay, but it's more than 4 tefachim, it's 5 tefachim. Even if it's by the corner, it's no good. Why? Because no one will say by the corner is a Pesach. No one makes a Pesach, an entrance, right, into the corner, right, of where walls meet, and therefore that's considered to be too large of a breach in the walls of the Mavui, and therefore one will not be able to carry there. And the Rav Huna Amar Echad Zev Echad Zev Arba. No, anything is 4, whether it's 4 on the side or 4 in the front. It's always 4. V'chein Omar Le Rav Huna Le Rav Chana Bar Rava Lo Tiflu Aloi. I don't even should argue in such a case. Why? The Ravi Le Dam Charia the Avad Uvda Kavasi. Right, because Rav was once in the Macharia, and he ruled like me that you weren't. In other words, anything less than 4 tefachim was not allowed to be carried. Samarlei, no, Rav the Bika Matzah the Gadar Bagadar. No, the case over there was different because over there, Rav was talking about a case of where it was in a field, right? And he saw that the people over there, they were not so machmir, and therefore, in the case of a bika, in the case of an open field, so therefore, since they weren't, he went ahead and had a fence put up over there, and therefore, in that case, he ruled normally normally be 10 amos, but since over there they're carrying the field, he saw that people were not really so machmir when it comes to carrying on Shabbos, and therefore he ruled that case he was machmir, and so he also wanted to be machmir in this case of any breach in the wall, and that's why he said anything less than 4 tefachim you can't carry in, but really perhaps Rav holds 10 amos. Fine. And Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. So says Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. Kavase de Rav Huna mistavra. It's more logical to say like Rav Huna. Rav Huna is the second opinion who said either way, whether the hole, right, the breach is on the front or the side, it's always 10 amos, right? Excuse me, it's always 4 tefachim, not 10 amos. It's always 4 tefachim. So why? Di'itamar mavui akum. All right, we're going to discuss this case a lot today, right? So now mavui akum, a bent mavi. Now, if you look over here in this picture, here's the picture here. Those of you can see. So you see there's an alleyway, right? There's an alleyway that is, there's two Rosh Hashanahs there. There's one over here and there's one over here. So it's basically an L. Like you can travel through the alleyway up here and then across to the other Rosh Hashanah, all right? And you go across here and just open, both ends there. So it open on like an L. And it's surrounded by, chatzeros that were open to houses. So instead of having normally just, an alleyway with 2 houses, where chatzeros on the side, it goes up and then it goes across. Now, that's called a mavui akum. We're going to discuss it today. So in the case of a mavui akum, so what halach is it? So Rav Omar Tarasik Mafush and Shmuel Omar Tarasik Kasasum. Now, this halacha. When we talk about mavui, right, we haven't really defined different types of mavui alleyways, right? So a mavui, there's a mafulish, right, which means open. In other words, as a mavui, it's open on both ends, right? Let's say, almost like alleys in Chicago, right? The alley goes, completely through from one end to the other, right? It goes right through, and we don't have Rosh Hashanah here, but there's Rosh Hashanah each side, and the alley goes mafulish. That's called mafulish. And then there's an alley, which is susum. In other words, it's a dead end. It goes into a wall. It's only open one end into a Rosh Hashanah. That's called a mavui, which is susum. So the question is something which is bent. Now, right, you can't go through, right? It doesn't go through. It doesn't have that attribute, but it's open on both ends if you go ahead and make a turn. You can't see directly through it, but you can walk directly through it. So which one is it? Is it considered like it's completely open, or is it considered to be closed? Machlokes is Rav and Shmuel. Rav says it's considered to be open, and Shmuel says it's considered to be susum. So now, b'maya skinan. Now, what are we talking about over here? Right? So ilema b'yaser mi'aser b'ha lema Shmuel tarasa kasasum. Right? So now, when we say where the bend over there, right? So ilema b'yaser is if you say that it's more than 10 amos wide, b'ha lema Shmuel tarasa kasasum. Right? So if we see, right, with this, what Shmuel says, is by where the area where it bends, because we're going to have a machlokes at the bends, how do you treat that area, right? Because we'll soon discuss as to what one has to go ahead and put in. It's not just the 2 ends that are open, just the rabbim. He should really do something in the middle, because it's almost like 2 attached mavuis, right? It's going to be like one mavui here and one mavui, here, right? We're going to discuss that. And by the bend where they connect, that's going to be the area of discussion. So if that area over here is more than 10 amos, right? Which Shmuel say tarasa kasasum, right? So would he say that's considered to be closed off? It's really more wide open. Elav, right? Rather, it must be be'ester, right? Less than 10, right? Become a Rav tarasa mefulash. And Rav says, even though it's less than 10, it's still considered to be mefulash. It's still considered to be an open mavui. And alma, what you see there, appears as mavui mitzido barabo. We see over here that you need that even 4 tefachim is considered to be a breach. In other words, since Rav will say that you have to go ahead and treat it like a something which is a mavu mufulish, and therefore, as soon as he laid down the machlokes by mavu and fulish, one has to go ahead and put a tzuras pesach there. And so we're even talking about something which is less than 10 amos, but 4 tefachim. So you see, Rav holds that anything even more than 4 tefachim has to be enclosed, right? Has to be closed up. Right? So therefore, we see over here that Rav holds even, right, any sort of breach in the wall, like he's talked before about the breaches of the walls, either on the side or the front, is not just less than 10 tfachim, but even up to 10 amos, but even up to 4 tfachim. And Rav Chana Barabba says, no, it's not a proof. Shani Hassan, Baki Barabim. Since over there, people from the Rabbim, right? People, they make a shortcut through this mavui because, it's shaped like an L and it can go from one end to the other, from one Rosh Hashanah to another. Therefore, there's more people that might use it. So therefore, maybe in that case, even if it's less than 10, we need you to go ahead and basically make a tzuras Pesach there, right? Make an entranceway over there. But when it comes to a regular wall of a mavui, that since the Rabbim do not really travel in it, therefore maybe there's no need to go ahead and enclose it as long as it's less than 10 amos. So Michlal. So we see over here that maybe this is even a case, even when the Rabbim do not go through, according to Rav Huna, says that even if the Rabbim don't go through, you still less. So my shnami the Rav Ami Rav Asi, right? What would be the difference in the case of Rav Ami Rav Asi? We said over here that if anything up to, right, when they said that was the case we first had from last time, we discussed, let me find Rav Ami Rav Asi. Right, we had that, and I think it was Hayam and Aleph, right? We discussed the case over there. Let me just find it. Right, so he said, right, the bottom, right. So he said over there, in the case of when you had the case over there, when there was a hole on the wall that was basically 10 amos, right? Remember that was when we had Remember, there was like the end of the mavi was broken, and you had a board holding up the cross beam, the korah. So as long as that board was at least 4 tefachim wide, it closed up 10 amos, right? So we see that they held that 10 amos was a shear, right? So why if you see over here that Rav Huna held that even less than 10 amos is a problem, even if the Rabbim don't go. So why is it different in the case of Rabbi Ravasi? So our answer is no. Hasan dika gedude hacha delaka gedude. Over there, in other words, when we say that it was there was over there when we said it was no problem less than 10, it was when there was a gedude. Gedude means that basically that the break in the wall was still problematic to walk over. In other words, it wasn't a clean break off the ground. You still had to step over something. So since you had to step over something, there was still maybe some of the baseboard or whatever it is was still in the ground. Therefore, it was not easy travelable. And therefore, in such a case, we'd say that even a breach of up to 10 amos would be sufficient. But over here, the case of Rav Huna, where it was easily when you could walk through it, so therefore even less than 10 amos would be a problem. Fine. 2 dots. Tanarabana. Ketzad, now a new case. So Ketzad, we're 6 lines from the bottom. It says Ketzad and Vav Malal, Ketzad Marabin, Derech Rishus Harabim. So Gemara says, how does one go about making an Eruv in a Rishus Harabim? So we'll soon question, obviously, you can't really make an Eruv on a Rishus Harabim, right? That which we already discussed, making an Eruv is not a Rishus Harabim, is really only refers to an area such as a Carmelis, something which is not from the Torah is described as a public way. So anyways, we'll get back to that. So turn about case of Rishus Harabim. Oiset Tzuras Pesach mikan v'lecha v'kara mikan. Right? You make a Tzuras Pesach, you make a doorway. A doorway is 2 side posts, right, and something on top, right? A doorway, right, on one end, and either a lechi or a kara, a beam going across, or a board standing up on the side on the other end. And so that was the first opinion. That was the Tanakama. Chanani says, you have to have 2 doors, right? 2 doors on each side. And then therefore when it enters, people enters or people go in, it has to be closed afterwards. That's how you can carry in Rishus Harabim or this area here. No, you need a door on one end and you need a lechi and a kara on the other end. All right, the Rishus Harabim. So Gemara says now. Gemara answers. We just said Rishus Harabim mi'arava. Can you make an eruv in Rishus Harabim? V'otani learn a brayser. Yes, can Rabbi Yehuda. Furthermore, Rabbi Yehuda says, right? Mishaylu shnei batim shnei. Let's say the Rishus Harabim person had 2 houses and they faced one another across on Rishus Harabim. Oisel lechem mikan v'lechem mikan. Oy kara mikan v'kara mikan. V'noisem v'noisem b'yemso. So we want to go ahead and basically put either 2 lechis, one on each side, or 2 koras, right, on each side. And that was between the 2 edges of houses. And therefore he was able then to carry, right, from one side to the other, even though it was crossing over the Rishus Harabim, as long as he had to the right and to the left of him, either two beams or one beam on each side or lech on each side. And Amrlo, ein marvin Rishus Harabim bekach. You can't make an Erev on Rishus Harabim like this. So maybe it means that, no. You can't, this is not the way to make an Erev in Rishus Harabim. Rather, right, maybe you put doors up, right? If you would put a door up, you put an entranceway with a door that opens and closes, and as long as you close the door, you can go ahead and carry from one house to the other across the Rishus Harabim. Maybe that would be okay, right? When it comes to the city of Yerushalayim, right? If it wasn't for the fact that the doors were closed at night, right? People would be they would be chayiv for going ahead and carrying in what's called in Yerushalayim, right? Because it would have been a Rishus Harabim. Right? So in other words, you see over there that because those doors were closed right in the evening, so therefore there was an enclosed area and it was not like a public way. And Hani Abule de Mechuzah, and also the gates of Mechuzah, right? So we see if it wasn't for the fact that the doors were closed in the evening, right, then there would have been a Rishus Harabim also in there. So what do you see over there? So you see that since those doors were all closed, it changed the status of there. But just because he puts the doors in, he wants to go ahead and close them to carry, that would not be permitted. So Amar Rav Yehuda, Hachikam, this means to say, Keitzad Ma'arvin Mavuas Hamufulashos Rishus Harabim. It's not how do you go ahead and make an Erev Rishus Harabim. Rather, our original question was how do you make an Erev when it comes to a Mavui that is Mafulash that's open on both sides to a Rishus Harabim? That's the question, right? So, right. So in other words, your typical alleyway, the north end and the south end, you both have, streets going across, right? Let's say, this right here is the Mavui. So, right. So you have, right. So over here is Rishus Harabim, and over here is Rishus Harabim, right? So and therefore, this alleyway is, can go from one to the end. And the question is, right? If you have an alleyway here and there's chatzeros on both sides, how are you able to go ahead and carry in here? So what do you do at the two ends? That's what we said. One opinion says you need two doors. One says you need one door and a lechi or kor on the other end. And that one says just either two lechis or two koros is sufficient. So in Isis says about mekan, the lechi v'kor mekan. So then we said one of the opinions was to make a suras pesach a doorway on one end, and the other end was a lechi and a korah, right? And so that's what Rav Yehuda explained. Now, Itzmar, Rav Omar Hilchasa Ketanakama. The halach is like the Tanakama, right? And the Tanakama said, what did the Tanakama say? Tanakama, as we mentioned before, said, Suras Pesach Mikan, V'lecha V'kar Mikan. Right? So Tanakama held that you put a Suras Pesach on one end, right, doorway, and then the other end is either the lechi or the korah. That is the Tanakama. Now, Shmuel Omar, Halachi Chananya. Shmuel said, Chananya, who quoted in Chananya, if you look back at the Brisa, the Chananya said, according to Beis Hillel, right? He quoted Beis Hillel, Beis Shammai, so obviously he's going with Beis Hillel, referring in Chananya. So he says, Beis Hillel, you make a door on one end and a lech and kar on the other end. So both of them hold lech and kar on the other end. The question is, do you have a door on the other end, or you just have it Suras Pesach, right? The difference is Suras Pesach is just a doorway, but you don't need an actual door that closes. And according to Beis Hillel, which is Chananya, or which Shmuel said the halach is like, you have to have a door on that side of one of the ends of the mavui and have it closed. Fine. Chananya, According to Chananya, who held like Beis Hillel says you need a door on one end and the other end is the lechi korah. So does it have to be closed or not, right, in order to carry it? So Tashmak and listen to Rav Hu Yehud Amar Shmuel. Ein tzarich lino v'chein Amar Rav Masna Amar Shmuel ein tzarich lino. It doesn't have to be closed, right? The door doesn't have to be closed. Some say Rav Masna bedida ve'uvda. Some say it was Rav Masna was there and he says there was a ma'aser with me. And Amar Shmuel ein tzarich lino. And I was with Shmuel and he told me you don't have to go ahead and close the door. So boy minei Rav Anan tzarich lino ein tzarich lino. Right? Do you have the same question? Do you have to close it or not? So Amarlu ta chazi hani abulid and Nahardia. Go ahead and look at the gates of Nahardia. the timing ad plagayu that they were basically halfway, like in the sand, right? In other words, over time, this sort of, I guess, either the doors of the city, I guess, from the weight sort of sank into the ground, and it was basically covered with sand, right? Or some of it was in the sand. It wasn't really closable. And then Shmuel went through, and he never said anything. He never said, "Oh, this is problematic. They have to close in order to carry." He never said it. So what do you see over there? You see they don't have to be closed. Now those were different because maybe that was how they originally were, right? They were basically closed, like in a stuck position. They weren't, open, but in other words, that's where they were stuck in the sand. It was more or less stuck in the closed position, not the open position, and maybe that's why Shmuel didn't say anything. And Kiyasa Rav Nachman Omar Panayu Liafrahu. When Rav Nachman came there, he said, clear out the sand. They have to be able to close. So you see, it has to be closed. However, Lemek Savar Rav Nachman Lino said maybe Rav Nachman held that it has to be closed. Of course, low. Kevan Deruyas Lino Afo Pishe Nulos. Maybe this means they have to be fit to close, but even if they weren't actually closed, it would be okay. So Machlokes over there was, according to Shmuel, holds you need a door in one end of a Mavu Mufulosh. Does that door have to be closed or not? It seems to be Machlokes as to what Shmuel held. And Hoi Mavi Akum Dahavi in the Hardia. All right. So now there was a mavui that was bent in the hardia, but this mavui, right? Actually, Rashi has a little picture here, right? It looks like a ches, right? An upside down ches in Rashi, right? And so it was a bent mavui, but it was bent twice. In other words, it was bent to the two areas of the mavui. It came like a ches by the two bends. So really, it was the same Rishus Harabim, and it connected to it in two different spots. Right? So now, Rami aleh chumei de Rav v'chumei de Shmuel v'tzrichiu de Latos. So they had the chumrah of Rav and the chumrah of Shmuel. They applied two chumras to this mavui, right? And a chumrah of Rav and a chumrah of Shmuel, and therefore they required doors at both bends. All right, they required doors at both bends, right? So those of you who have the art scroll, right, you see the two doors that were, I think, the bottom one, right? You see by the two bends, right? They have, that's where they made the what's it called? The dolatos, closable doors by the bends, right? Actually, you see, even the picture in Rashi has it says Delis, that little line going across there. Fine. So what are these two chumras? So the chumra de Rav, the Omar, yes.
A quick question. When we say delit, how many amos you could do with delit that will cover? The definition of delit is how many amos now? The basic definition.
The definition would be that it's closed, meaning you can't, when it's closed, then you can't pass through it.
Okay, that's what it is. Now,
closes up the space completely.
Second one is lechi. How far it can cover from the wall it touch?
So
what the definition for lechi? How far it can go? Not the width.
So we haven't discussed the lechi, but we haven't discussed any dimensions of lechi at this point. So far, it seems to be basically you take some sort of board and you put it standing up next to. If you have the entranceway like this, you just stand up a board next to it, and that will notify people that you're coming into a different rishus. So there is no actual size. We talked a little bit about a korah, about being a tefach or not, but we discussed that a little bit. We didn't get into yet. But a lechi just means to be some sort of board that's standing up vertically. So vertical board next to the open area that leads into the rishus harabim. You're on mute. What? Wait, I don't hear you. Wait.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Just like you say, it's notification rather than actual confirmation.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. Okay. So let's see what's going on. So what are these two chumras? So chumra de Rav. We say the chumra de Rav because we had before we said it bent right, a bent mavui, right? So even though you can't see directly from one end of the Rosh Hashanah to the other, but you can walk through there. So he said that's the same halacha as a mavui mafulish, right? That's considered to be an open mavui as opposed to a closed one. But closed one, we don't have many halachas because the other end is like a dead end. You can't walk through it. So therefore, we don't treat it as much as like a public way as opposed to a mavui mafulish. So the chumrah of Rav is that we treat it like a mavui mafulish. So I've Rav halacha tanakama, but in that case, Rav says the halacha is like the Tanakama, right? And the Tanakama was that all you need is a tzuras of Pesach. You don't need a delis, right? You don't need the door there, right? And on that, we had like Kishmuel, Demar halacha Chananya, right? And so he said the halacha is like Chananya, where it says you need a door there, but you need a door. The V'hamar Shmuel Tarasa Kasasum, but Shmuel says when it comes to a bent mavui, it's not considered a mavui mafulish; it's considered a mavui sasum. So that's karav, the amar terasa kamuflash. So that's the double chumrah. The double chumrah is like this. When we look at this bet one, we rule like Rav, we more machmer, we say it's considered to be a mavui mafulish, right? An open mavui. And then when it comes to how do you seal it up, what do you put at the bends? So you put at the bends like Shmuel, which said you require doors and not that just it starts with Pesach. So therefore we apply both the chumras of Rav and the chumras of Shmuel. And are you allowed to go ahead and do two chumras, right? Is that something that was permissible? But the halacha is normally like Beis Hillel and Kedivir Beis, and the Gemara's going to ask this contradiction. Kedivir Beis Hillel Isa, Mekula Beis Shammai. So he says, in other words, one who has what? Excuse me. Let's go back. Liolam halacha Beis Hillel. Halacha is like Beis Hillel. Right to lasas Kedivir Beis Shammai Isa and Kedivir Beis Hillel Isa. If one who wants to go do like Beis Shammai, you can do like Beis Shammai. If one who wants to go ahead and do like Beis Hillel, you can do like Beis Hillel. And Mekule Beis Shammai, Mekule Beis Hillel, Russia. But if a person says, I'm going to do like Beis Shammai sometimes and Beis Hillel sometimes, just depending who has the kula, that person is a Russia. Kachumra Beis Shammai, Kachumra Beis Hillel. A person says, okay, I'm going to go like Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai. It just depends who has the chumrah. And I'll go according to the chumrah. I'm very frum. Allah v'kasav aymer. Right, the fool walks in darkness. Right, just because you're machmer doesn't mean you're always right, and therefore you're a fool by choosing chumras. Ella rather, if you go like Beis Shammai, go like Beis Shammai throughout. If you go like Beis Hillel, you go like Beis Hillel throughout. So the Gemara now, first of all, points out a contradiction. But Hagav Kasha, Amarta Li'alam Halacha Beis Hillel. You said the halacha is like Beis Hillel. Then he said, halacha is always like Beis Hillel. And then he says, if you want to do like Beis Shammai, do like Beis Shammai, do like Beis Hillel, do like Beis Hillel. What do you mean? You just said the halacha is always like Beis Hillel. Well, how could you choose to do like Beis Shammai? Says the like kasha. Kan koydem baskol, kan liacher baskol. One is perhaps the ma'aseh with the baskol, as we'll soon see later on in this Masechta, another week or so. Had to do with there was a machlokes between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai. And the baskol came in paskan halacha like Beis Hillel. So that was before the Baskol came down and said the halacha is like Beis Hillel. So therefore, you can choose to do like Beis Shammai, Beis Hillel. But afterwards, then you can choose it. B-boy say we can say Haba halacha Baskol. Maybe it was after the Baskol. Turn the page. For Rabbi Yeshui, and in his opinion, Rabbi Yeshua, and he says, Torah lo b'shamayim, right? Rabbi Yeshua said, no, we don't use a baskol to help us paskin, right? The halacha is in this world and not from the heavens, and therefore the baskol cannot come and assist in terms of pasking halachas. Therefore, there's still a suffix as to whether it's machlokes Beis Hillel Beis Shammai. Or viboy say hachakam, as we say, kohecha demishkichas trei tanav trei amarai depligadadi. Kain machlokes Beis Shammai or Beis Hillel. So no, this is what I meant to say. If you want to choose like Beis Hillel or Beis Shammai, you can do what you want. Just don't pick to always go l'chumra or always go l'kula. Right? It meant when you have a machlokes tanaim or if you have a machlokes amarayim, and a machlokes such as like when Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai argue, so they argue frequently, and therefore you can choose one of the sides, but choose the same side always. However, but don't do only the kulas of both or the chumras of both. Nevertheless, so you shouldn't do like them, but it was not the case of Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai, because that the halach we know is always like Beis Hillel. Rather, it just means when you have people argue like Beis Hillel, Beis Shammai, then you can go like either one. Just don't always stick to the chumrah or don't always stick to the kula. Rather, you stick to that tan or that amora, right? But not in the case of Beis Hillel, Beis Shammai, because Beis Hillel, Beis Shammai, obviously the halacha is like Beis Hillel and not Beis Shammai. Fine. So now, Gemara says, Mikol Makom Kasha. So going back now. Okay, we have a kasha, right? We said before that in that town of that bent mavui, the double bent mavui, we said they went like two chumras. They went like the chumrah of Rav, that they treated the area like a mavui mafulish. And they went like the chumrah of Shmuel to say that they need two delatos, they need actual doors, closed doors at the bends. So how could you do two chumras? We see over here, you shouldn't go always like chumrah. Some Rav Nachman by Yitzchak, kulo karav avdua, right? No, maybe it was all like Rav. Damarav, hu namarav, halacha ve'ein marin ken. He says the halacha is like this, right? But rather we don't go ahead and tell people to go ahead and do it. So in other words, we tell people to, even though the halach is that you don't need an actual door, you need it Sursa Pesach. Nevertheless, Rav really held that Lamaisa, you do go. He did go ahead and tell people you need a door. So therefore, it was like Rav. Rav held it foolish, and therefore he required doors. But according to the other opinion, it was said that Rav said that that you should that the halach is really that you only need a Tzursa Pesach, and he wasn't machmer and didn't want to tell people that. He told people that all you need is a Tzursa Pesach. You don't need a door. So according to that, now you have the chumrah of Rav and the chumrah of Shmuel. Some Rav Shizi kilo avdina and the chumrah devrei trei heichad esasi adadi. No. What does it mean when you don't, you can't have two chumras? It only means when they contradict one another, right? When there's a stira in them, right? However, kagoyin shidra gagolas, like this case they're about to bring, in a case, let's say a skull or a spine that's missing, right? That's what's about chokes there. The Tanakh we learned in the Mishnah. If you have a skull or a spine that's missing, and the question is, how much is missing for it to be metame betumas oil? So how much is missing when it comes to the spine? So right, two vertebrae, one vertebrae. When it comes to a skull, so right, he says the hole of basically to be drilled in, right? In other words, that if you go ahead and you take from a person, and then you take right a part of that part of the skull will be missing while he's alive, he almost you die. And so that's the machlokes. In other words, Shmuel requires, right, more of it to be missing in order to be matame, right? So in this case, right, who's the chumrah in this case, right? The chumrah in this case would be base. The chumrah in this case would be base Shammai, right? Because he says, even if you're missing one vertebrae, it's still tummy, right? Beis Hillel says it's not tummy anymore, right? Because that's considered to be lacking, right? So Beis Shammai is more machmir. However, it says, so too when it comes to a treifa. So, no, but according to Beis Shammai, if a treifa of an animal is missing one vertebrae, it's not a treifa yet, only if it's missing two, right? So therefore, according to Beis Shammai, he's makil when it comes to making an animal a treifa. So what do you see over here? So this case, if you hold like one in one case and the other in another case, then it's tarti d'sasya. That is a contradictory. You have to hold like Beis Shammai throughout or like Beis Hillel throughout. But you can't say, in this case I'm like Beis Shammai, in this case I'm like Beis Hillel. But it's no stira, right? Then you're allowed to go ahead and do it. So we see over here, but in our case, it's not a stira, right? If you call it a mavui, right, just because we're calling it mavui mafulish, an open mavui. So therefore, that would be sufficient if it's considered to be an open one, and you put two doors there. It's not a contradiction to one another. If it's contradicting one another to hold a chumrah and to hold into the other one, where by definition, well, according to here, right, this would be, like in that case, this is considered to be lacking if it's missing one vertebrae. But in the other case, missing one vertebrae is not lacking. So then that's a stira. But in our case, there is no contradiction. There is no stira. Wait, if there's no stira, right, then you're not allowed to go basically hold to chumras. So Meisiv, Rabbi Sharshia, Meisiv Rabbi Kiva Shelikit Esrog Be'echa B'Shvat. So there's Meisiv by Rabbi Kiva that he took an esrog in the third year, on the first of, it was leading into the third year, right, of an esrog in Shvat. Right, and we know that Shvat, in terms of what we do with Shumas and Maasros, so the new year is a machlokes between I believe is Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai. One is according to Beis Shammai, the new year for trees is Rosh Chodesh Shvat, and according to Beis Hillel, it's Tu B'Shvat, right, and the 15th of Shvat. Now, That's the nafkamina is basically what type of Trumas and Meiser you give, right? You always give Meiser Rishon, but when it comes to the second tithe, the second Meiser, right? So years 1, 2, 4, and 5, you give Meiser Sheni, and the years 3 and 6, you give Meiser Ani. So now he had this esrog, right? That he took it off, right? He harvested it on the first of Shvat. V'nogu bo shnei isurim. He did two Meisers, right? So from that crop he took, he did it basically a tenth that was Meiser Sheni, and a tenth that was Meiser Ani. He did both, but it's Tarti the Sasri, right? Right? So it's a stira, right? If it's either one or the other, it can't be both. By definition, it's either year 2 or year 3. How did he do both? So you see that you can do 2 chumras, even though it's contradiction one another. So our answer is no. Rabbi Akiva Gemira Estivically. Really, Rabbi Akiva learned from his Rebbeim as to which one, but he forgot which one. He was mesupik as to which of his Rebbeim said which way. He forgot which way Beis Hillel taught, right? Whether it was Beis Hillel taught it was the 1st of Shvat or the 15th of Shvat. And if that's the case, and therefore he did 2 chumras there. And not that he saw the halacha was you have to do both, right? In order to fulfill both opinions. No, you don't fulfill both opinions. You only do one opinion. But he didn't know which opinion he had to fulfill. So therefore, in that case, he was just he took both just in case. Fine. 2 dots. So Yosef, Rav Yosef, Kamei de Rav Huna, Yosef Kamar. So he was sitting before Rav Huna, and he said, Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. He stated Rav Yehuda, the name of Rav. Right? It's important to say. We'll soon say that Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. Ma'achloikes besratia mikana srati mikan. That which we talk about, putting a, sealing off the ends, right, of a mavui mafulosh. We're only talking about where it's opened up into a stratia, right, into the public, into a rabbin. Uplati mikan, plati mikan, right? Another type of that's more of like a shuk place, right? Both of these are considered to be Rosh Hashanah, as Rashi points out, right? One is just a place where the people just walk, and the other is more of a market area. However, aval strati mekan bika mekan. But let's say the mavli is mafulish, the alleyway is open, and one end is a stratia, one end is basically Rosh Hashanah, public way, but the other end is a bika, is like a field. Oh, bika mekan, or you have a field on both sides, and it's considered to be mafulish. It's going to be open. You don't need any doors there. All you need is a tzuras pesach in a doorway on one end, and a lechi and a kara on the other end. So Gemara says, wait, wait, if you have, right, a stratia on one end, right, a public Rosh Hashanah on one end, and a field on the other end, so, and then there, all you don't need any doors over there, all you need is a tzuras pesach on one end, and a lechi or kor on the other end, so bika mekan, you had to tell me that if you have a field on both sides, you need, of course you wouldn't need a delis, so why'd you tell me? So where answer no, hachi kavas means to say strati mekan ubika mekan nase kabika mekan ubika mekan. No, if you have a public Rosh Hashanah basically on one end and an open field on the other end, then it's just like having 2 open fields, and therefore all you need is a tzuras pesach on one end and a lech and a karav on the other end. Umesayim ba mishmeid Rav Yehuda, and then now remember Rav Yosef was saying this halakha before Rav Huna, and this halakha he just said he quoted Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, and now. This end part, which he's about to say, he only says in the name of Rav Yehuda. He does not say Rav Yehuda said in the name of Rav. So we'll have to see, because Rav Yehuda was a Talmud of both Rav and Shmuel. Okay, so now this is just quoting in the name of Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda, im hayamavui kal rechava ein tzarech klum. If the mavui was open into a rechava, all right. What is a rechava? So there's a picture in Rashi. There's a picture in the art scroll. So if you take a look over there, basically what it is you have the mavli. So the mavli is in the middle, okay? And the one end, or this end of my Gemara, you have the Rosh Hashanah, okay? So we're talking about you have an alleyway, a straight alleyway, and there's 2 things on each side. So, and till now we discussed Rosh Hashanah, then you need a delas. If there's Rosh Hashanah and a bika, that was what we just described. All you need is tzuras pesach and malachi. But if you have Rosh Hashanah here, and on this end is a rechava, right? Basically, rechava is like an unused open field, right? That no one uses over there, right? Then you don't need anything, right? So you look in the picture, you see this, the picture, the Rechava is basically it's like next to a house, but it's not open from a house, right? No one uses that area, right? It's like a back area that no one uses, right? Because it's connected to the Mavli, it's not connected to any chatzeros. No chatzeros open up into that area. All you have is basically just unused land that people might walk through or not, right? So this is called a rechava. Nothing's open up into it, and therefore, if that is on one of the ends, then he doesn't need anything on that side. All you need is at the other end by the Shizarabim, either a lecha or kara, right? You don't need that. You don't need any sorts of pesach. You don't need anything over there because that's basically considered to be like it's closed off. Okay, so this was the second halakha. So, and this only said the name of Rav Yehuda, but not quote Rav. So Amar le Abai to Rav Yosef. So said Abai to Rav Yosef. Had Rav Yehuda, right? That which Rav Yehuda just said. The Shmuel, it must be the opinion of that Rav Yehuda heard from his other Rebbe Shmuel, and not Rav. Why? D, turn the page on the base. D, Rav. If it's from Rav, Kasha, right? It would be a Kasha. Because why? So Kasha either Rav, Kasha the Rav, other Rav, Batarti, right? It would be a contradiction. Why? Because what do we see by Rav? We're going to see it would be a big contradiction. I'm Rav Yomi by Rav, I'm a Rav. Mavui shenifratz b'mlar lechatzer. If you have a mavui, right, that there was a hole along the wall, right, into a chatzer, right. So then, right, the nifratz chatzer connector, and the wall of the chatzer basically opposite across it was also broken, and chatzer moter is a mavui yaser. Now, basically, you had a mavui, and there was a chatzer behind it. Okay. Now, if the wall between the chatzer and the mavui was basically broken, right, and basically now you have the chatzer behind, almost identical to the case that we just said. Okay, but instead of having this empty vacant lot at the end of the mavui, you had a chatzer who was there, and that wall broke. Now you have basically open instead of into empty lot, it's open into another chatzer, which is owned by houses, right, that people use over there. So we say over there the chatzer is mutter to go ahead and still carrying it. It doesn't affect it. But the mavui is aser. Now, why, if we held that if there was a vacant lot behind it, that there was no problem, so what's different than a mavui rechava? Just before we said Rav Yehuda quoted and said, hey, if you have a vacant lot behind, right, you can still carry them up as long as they have a source of Pesach, by the Shusarab. So why is that not the same halacha? You have a back wall, the back wall breaks, and there's a chutzner behind it. Why should the chutzner be any different than the vacant lot, right? You should be able to still carry them up as long as it's source of Pesach by the end of the Shusarab. So l'chayra, since Rav held, right, that you can't carry them over, it must be that Rabbi Yehuda's halacha was not the name of Rav, it must be the name of Shmuel. So I'm like, says, good point, I don't know. However, uvda havi bedura de Ravasa, right? There was a Maisa in the neighborhood of the Ravasa, right? So it's like the Roa, like shepherds. There was a mavui that was opened up into a vacant lot. The Asala came to Rav Yehuda, came for Rav Yehuda. He didn't require them to do anything. The Rav, if you have a kasha, Rav would require the case of the Chatzer. Okay, so just say that maybe don't ask the kasha on Rav Yehuda. Says, hey, Rav holds that you can't carry the mavui, because just say that he said the name of Shmuel, and therefore it's not a contradiction. However, Hashta Damar Le Rav Shesha Rav Shmuel Barabba. And some say it was Rav Yosef Barabba. That which Rav Shesha said to either Shmuel Barabba or Rav Yosef Barabba. He says, no, I'm going to explain to you. Asbir l'cha. Kan she'irva, kan klan she'irva. In the case, it depends of whether there was an eruv that was done between the mavui and the chatzir. Right? Now, that's it. The Rav Nami Lakash. Now, if you say that in the case of the Maisa, maybe the reason why he allowed them to go ahead and carry it is because there was an Eruv. There was an Eruv done between those inhabitants who shared the Mavui and the people who shared the Chatzir. Since there was an Eruv there, therefore it was permitted not to do anything else. So to over here, it's Rav Adarav Nami Lakasha. So to in the case of Rav, with Rav, it's also not a contradiction. Kan shever mechatzir in bnei mavui, kan shel eruv. In the case if they made an eruv with the bnei chatzir and the bnei mavui, so then in such a case, It's all considered to be one. You can carry into the mavui, and therefore nothing would be needed between this vacant lot and the mavui, because now this vacant lot is they made an eruv with those of the mavui, and therefore you'll be able to carry in the mavui. But if there was nothing done, then we treat that chutzner like a vacant lot, and therefore it would be permitted. And the Gemara, just real quick, I just want to do this last couple of lines in the next page, because then it turns into a sugya, and this way we don't remind ourselves the sugya. Well, lamai desalig adaisa. So what was the havamina meikara? So my desalig adaisa meikara bein she'eru bein shale'eru pligi. Right? There was a dad. They argued whether there was we didn't even think about the eruv. But if we would have thought about it, so if we didn't think about it, we thought there was a machlokes in the case of whether it was an eruv or there was no eruv. So b'shelo eruv my pligi. So eruv my pligi, b'shelo eruv my pligi, right? And if there was an eruv, right, what would be the machlokes? And if there was no eruv, right, also what would be the machlokes, right? In other words, it's not open; it's just a rabbim. So it says, if they didn't make an eruv, what was the difference? The case was like this. When it wasn't exactly a case of where, if you look at the picture, right, and from the Rashi, right, of the two, right, of the, what's it called, of the pages ago, or the Rechava, right, you see how the vacant lot is wider than the mavui. So, right, but in this case, so over there, when you're in the back lot, you can see that there's entrances to the mavui. But if you're in the mavui, it doesn't look like it looks like it's going straight. You don't see that it goes wide, right? So in other words, a case of benirim b'chutz v'shabba b'fnim. So when you're in the inside, right? So from the outside, it looks like it's there's doorways there, but on the inside, it looks flush right along the inside. So the ervu, and therefore in the case, so in this case, so therefore. According to Rav, it would be a good case. In other words, it would be considered to be different, because even though from the inside, right, you see it looks to appear the same, but from the outside, from the other area looking in, you see that the walls aren't all the same. In the case of Eruv, can we forgive Rav Yosef? And if there was a case of an Eruv, and the question is, were they allowed to go ahead and carry them up? Can we forgive Rav Yosef? The argument of Rav Yosef, right? Only when the mavui, right, is only on the side of Akala, let's see that Rechava Aser, right? But if the mavui, right, was stopped, right, was the end of the back lot, then they would both be Aser. In other words, in the case over here, when did Rav Yehuda say, right, that you don't need anything else in the mavui, right? It was only the case of where it went on both sides, would extend on both sides. But if there's only one side, if you look at the picture at the bottom of the art scroll, right? Let me just move this over here. Look at the picture of the bottom of the art scroll, right? You see that the lot, the back lot, was only wide on one end. So it was only wide on one end, and that was the machlokas between the Havamina was that perhaps Rav and Shmuel argued in this case, but it turns, in one case, one holds that it's considered to be one continuous thing, and therefore you'd be forbidden to use the mavui. The other one say no, it would be like a vacant lot, but it turns out that this was never the case, because we can just say that the whole case was that which they said was mutter, it was continue, where you didn't have to do anything, was when they did a eruv. But if there was no eruv, then everyone would agree there wasn't a stira in Rav, that if there was an eruv done, then they would be allowed to go ahead and carry it if the fence broke in the back. All right, we'll stop here. Shkayach, everybody. Have a wonderful day and enjoy the beautiful weather. Is it Ramiyan, by the way? You can stop. Where is I see there's a cat on now. Oh, he's doing a bris. Okay, fine. All right, so we got to be in touch. See you this week. Huh?